All 7 of us had big inflated egos. We were either national champions, world champions, former Olympians. We were businesses and brands. We were celebrities at the time, and so we had egos.
That's Olympic gold medalist Dominique Dawes.
Once we all collectively made the decision to check our ego, we were able to then accomplish what we knew we could set out to accomplish.
I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. Dominique Dawes is an Olympic gold medalist, 3-time Olympian, and a pioneering leader in the sport of gymnastics. She was a member of the U.S. Magnificent Seven team that claimed gold at the 1996 Atlanta Games. Today, Dawes leads as a founder, spokesperson, and mentor, leveraging her expertise from the world stage to empower athletes, executives, and organizations to perform with resilience, precision, and clarity. I sat down with Dominique to discuss how adversity can develop resilience and discipline, why empowering your people is the key to building a scalable organization, and the importance of redefining your relationship with work to create a greater impact.
Success is, in my opinion, not more money or more accolades or, more of achievement of certain things. It could be more time with your family, building a deeper relationship, maybe with the people that are on your team.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. Dominique, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, we were very excited to have you at the Game Changers Summit this year, and now people get to hear you live on the Game Changing Attorney podcast.
Yes, this will be a lot of fun. Let's go.
Awesome. All right. So I imagine most listeners are probably familiar with you or have just heard your name before, but I know you started competing on the world stage as a teenager. What drove you at that age? I'm just curious, at that age, when you're at the Olympics, where did that internal drive come from?
My first Olympic Games was when I was 15 years old, and having an opportunity to qualify for my first Olympic Games in Baltimore, Maryland, right outside my hometown of Montgomery County, Maryland, was a dream come true. I had set my sights on the Olympics when I was about 11 years old, so it took 4 years to get there, but I started the sport when I was 6, so it was a 9-year journey to get to my first Olympic Games. And at those Olympic trials, I was the first female African-American to rightfully qualify to those Olympic Games and to march out in the arena in Barcelona, Spain, and have wonderful opportunities to stay in the Olympic Village, to bump into the likes of Carl Lewis and so many other phenomenal athletes there, and to meet the dream team was something that I could have never imagined in my wildest dreams. But I think what drove me at such a young age was number one, I had a passion for the sport of gymnastics. I lived in the gym. It became my home. And also, I knew I was making an impact on others' lives. I started receiving fan mail letters when I was 11 years old, and that is so uncommon. Today, it's all social media, but people used to sit down and they would get a pen and paper and they would write me letters saying they saw me compete in a competition. I helped them dream big and they're never going to give up and they'll always be a fan. And the exciting thing is, throughout my 48-year journey in life now, I've met thousands and thousands of people that have stopped to tell me that they either had my poster on their wall, the team poster on their wall, they wrote me fan mail letters, and that I even responded. And I think as a young person, that really planted a seed in me, knowing that I could impact someone else's life. And that's what drove me to have a nearly 18-year journey in the sport of gymnastics.
Were there any days, I just have to imagine when you were waking up and you're like, I just don't want to do this today. I mean, even when you're getting ready for the Olympics and even at that level, were there any days where you weren't feeling it?
Michael, every day.
Okay.
Every day. It's a very tough sport. It was grueling as a young person. When I lived with my parents, I was up at 4:45 in the morning. When I lived with my coach, I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I trained from 6 to 8 in the morning. I went to public school 8:30 to about 2:20. And then I was back in the gym 3 to 8 p.m. at night or 4 to 9 p.m. at night. And I also trained on the weekends. And when I lived with my coach, there were times where my parents couldn't pick me up. And so I would just live in the gym on Saturday and Sunday. I loved the sport, but it was very tough. I don't think I ever got a taste of what it would be like to not train for the Olympic Games. I'm a little afraid if I would have, maybe I would have walked away from the sport, but it was challenging physically, emotionally, socially, in so many ways. And I felt like I wanted to quit every day because there was always an obstacle that I had to face. But what kept me in the sport, as I mentioned earlier, are the fans. It was those people that were inspired by what I was doing, that were impacted by what I was doing, that dreamed big because they saw me either on the national stage or the international stage, and they too believed that they could achieve greatness. And so whenever I wanted to quit, I really thought about that young girl or that young boy or that mom or that grandparent that reached out to say, thank you for what you're doing. You're paving a way for my young person, or you're paving a way for that individual. And that's really what kept me in it. And I was talented. I loved working hard. I am a hard worker just in whatever I pursue in life. And so I knew I wasn't going to give up, but it was a challenging road.
Yeah. Many people want the world-class results, but not with the sacrifices. Could you share? I mean, I know you mentioned just even what that day schedule looked like, but just what were some of the sacrifices that you had to make, but most people never saw? And I guess to further elaborate on this is that, was there any other way? I mean, to compete at this level, was there any way without those sacrifices?
Well, I would say my sacrifices were not that much greater than other Olympic gymnasts that were training to, make it to the biggest stage in our athletic. You do need that level of commitment, or at least it was believed that you needed that, vast level of commitment. We usually peaked when we were 15, 16 years old. So you can imagine we start at such a young age, and then you commit your whole childhood for that one dream to be able to compete on an Olympic stage for pretty much less than 5 minutes. You get that one shot. Can it be done differently? Now, as a founder and brand ambassador of a gymnastics academy, I do believe it can be done differently. I'm a mother of 4 kids, and I look back at my childhood, and I don't want that for my children. I don't think that level of sacrifice is needed. I do think that kids should be able to enjoy their childhood. I remind myself my kids have one childhood. My husband, and he's a very loving individual, so not to make it seem as if he's mean or anything, but he's like, you don't know how to have fun, because when you were a child, you just worked. And, the summertime should be an opportunity for kids to vacation with their families, or even a day after school to go swing and play on a play set or jump in a pool and go walk down the neighborhood and play with their friends and have play dates. I knew nothing about that. Like, a play date to me was training 5 hours after school. All of my friends wore leotards. All of my friends were type A individuals and had these lofty goals of either making it to the Olympics or the elite level, or maybe a Division I scholarship in the sport of gymnastics. Many of them did accomplish that. And so I was surrounded by a unique group of individuals. And again, when I look back, I'm thinking that sacrifice was for me, but I don't think it's for everyone. And I do believe it can be done differently. And I hope to see that in my academies.
Yeah. I've heard you say that winning a gold medal isn't in your top 10 life events. And I guess on that note, so what are the top 3?
Yeah. The top 3?
Yeah.
I would say top 3 would be, I have 4 kids, so I guess you can't rank them, but it would be kids. It would be coming into the Catholic faith, and my husband's going to be mad, but he's like 3rd. But it would be making that commitment to marry. That was very challenging for me coming from the household I came from. My parents divorced, and that process took quite a few years, and it was going on during the 96 Olympics. Not great timing. Not that there's any time that's a great timing for a divorce, but I think when that was occurring, and even after that as a young adult, I vowed that I would never get married, because my example of what marriage was my parents, and also another environment that I lived in. That was not a good marriage either. So for me to be able to make that commitment and make it a good, healthy marriage and be fully committed, definitely puts it in the top 3.
Got it. Obviously, you took an extraordinary gymnastics career. You turned it into a business and a mission. I'm just curious, what inspired the journey from Olympic athlete to entrepreneur?
I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My dad owned a trash company, and my grandfather owned a trash company, and my uncles owned trash and recycling companies. And I wondered why, when they sold the businesses, they didn't think of us women, because I would have bought it. I loved what they were doing. It's a necessity. I mean, just think about during COVID. They were my examples of what hard work and sacrifice and commitment was. I know when I lived at home, my dad was out at 3 o'clock in the morning and many times didn't get home until after 8 p.m. Though I did end up living with my coach during my earlier years, I just knew about work ethic and sacrifice and doing things for yourself. And, if times got tough, you didn't give up. You just kind of, picked up your bootstraps or, whatever, and, worked hard and did what you needed to do for your family. And so I don't think it was foreign for me to become an entrepreneur. I became a brand when I was 18 years old. I actually signed a full scholarship to Stanford University, was so excited to go to the other coast from Maryland to California. And then a little birdie got in my ear and said, oh, there's an Olympic Games in Atlanta, Georgia, 2 years away. You could become a brand, a business, and you could make substantially more money. And so I decided to become that professional gymnast, and the rest is history. I've always been this brand and this business, either through speaking engagements or endorsements or developing campaigns. And then when we opened our first gymnastics gym in July 2020, it was not foreign to me whatsoever to start my own business. This was different with bricks and mortar and having people come through the door and having to overcome, a global pandemic and face what we had to face there in Montgomery County, Maryland was extremely tough. But whatever I do, I usually do it, with passion. There's a huge commitment. And with the gyms, it came from a place of pain. In 2016, I was on Good Morning America, and I was commentating about the sport of gymnastics and just the Olympics in general in Rio. I was a mom of 2 young kids, so I didn't want to go overseas at that time. And shortly after those Olympic Games, that Simone Biles won, the name Larry Nassar became a national and global name. And Larry Nassar sexually abused hundreds of young women in the sport of gymnastics. And I knew him for 10 years of my childhood. He was our Olympic team doctor in 1996. He was our Olympic team doctor in 2000. He was that individual that presented himself to us young girls, and we were girls still, as a safe space. And he saw the level of abuse and he saw the toxic culture and really took advantage of it. And so in 2016, when the horrors of what he did came out, I started processing what I went through in the sport of gymnastics. And I realized, hey, things can be done differently. And my husband, being a school teacher of almost, at that time, 18 years, he had come from such a positive environment where young men would come back to the school and they would want to thank him or thank the headmaster for helping turn those young boys into great, substantial men. And my husband opened my eyes and he said, gosh, none of you gymnasts want to go back and see your coach or see your coaches. You guys don't want to go back. There's this fear and anxiety. And that's when I then realized, wow, that was a pretty toxic environment that I came from. Let's develop something differently. And he encouraged me to start the first Dominique Dawes Gymnastics and Ninja Academy. It's now Dominique Dawes Academy. And we just knew that we could do things the right way. We could go into this business caring about each individual that walked through our doors, not looking at them as a business commodity, not looking at them as the next Simone Biles or how they can build our business and brand, but really caring about them as individuals and lifting up their self-esteem. We don't look at people at their ability or their talent or their parents' net worth or anything like that to try to do private lessons galore. No, it's really caring about every single young girl and boy that comes through our doors as individuals and lifting up their self-esteem. And so when we started that business, it really came from a place of pain, but I'm a very driven individual. So that passion, I always say, developed. It helped me develop my purpose and allowed us to make a greater impact. And that's really what allowed us to start that business.
Yeah. And a lot to unpack there, because we have commonality here in the sense that I invested in our Crisp headquarters in March of 2020, also during the pandemic. I guess, talk me through your experience at that time. I mean, obviously, everybody's sheltering at home, and the idea of doing something in person was probably kind of a risky proposition, right?
Very risky. I signed my lease November 2019. I'd like to say that I was brave and that I signed my lease in the middle of the global pandemic. No, I did not. I signed a 10-year lease November 2019. It took a lot to get this lease. Every landlord on the way from Bethesda, Maryland to Clarksburg, Maryland said absolutely no. a number of landlords were asking, hey, can you show us 6 months of financials of running this business? And we're like, how can we show you 6 months of running this business when we don't have a building? Our landlord, I will say I'm grateful that he gave us an opportunity and he took the risk. And we signed the lease November 2019. And as you know, March 2020, everything shut down. We were supposed to open our doors April 2020. We had nearly 1,000 pre-sales, people committed to jumping into our business when we were opening our doors in April. I had a number of full-time staff members, of course, already on board, working on all the different aspects of operations. I was the CEO at the time, wearing a multitude of different hats. I learned so much. I got my MBA throughout running that business for the first 4.5 years, for sure. But, my husband I'm a realist. And he's a very optimistic person. And so he was always holding on to hope. He's like, you know what, this is going to end. We don't know when it's going to end. And people are going to eventually come through our doors. We were able to open our doors July 2020. And my husband and I, we do look back at photos where we're wearing masks, we're wearing shields, everyone's 6 feet apart. In Montgomery County, Maryland, we were told that we couldn't have more than 10 people in a building at a time. And so we were creative, and we would have 8 or 9 people in a class, one instructor, the front desk person was outside. I'm walking around both of the different buildings because they were separated. We would do some warm-ups outside. It was amazing, but it started off with maybe a couple of hundreds of people that came through. And so many parents would come to us and say, please, in tears even, because you could only see their eyes, but tears. And they would say, please do not close your doors. My child needs this. And we realized it was more than just gymnastics. And I already had a bigger cause to do this because I wanted to create a healthy culture. But many parents were like, my kids need this physically, they need this emotionally, and they need this socially. Kids were not going to school in Montgomery County, Maryland for a good year or so. And so this was their outlet to be able to connect with the rest of the world. And so we endured, we persevered. I continued to look at future locations, even in the midst of a global pandemic. At one point, I told my commercial real estate agent, Merrick, stop bringing me stuff. I said, I don't know when this is going to end. And he, his whole thing was like, these are opportunities that you got to take advantage of. And I'm very grateful. He kept providing me with other future locations so that I wasn't going to be closed-minded to the future growth of what we could do.
Yeah. And now I know you've expanded, like, as you were saying, to multiple locations. What's that look like? What have been some of the lessons that you learned? How's the mission expanded?
Yes, we're opening Ashburn, Virginia. I'm very excited about that. That'll be our 4th location. Then we've got downtown Silver Spring, Maryland. That's one of my hometown areas that we're going to be opening in early 2026. And then Alpharetta, Georgia in early 2026 as well. And we have many more in the pipeline. The growth is amazing. It got to a point where when I was running the business, my family is always going to come first. I'm a mom, so, I'm not going to make that sacrifice with my 4 little ones. I want to be there with them. They're 11, they're 10, and 7.5-year-old twins. And it got to a point where my older one, and probably my second one as well, because she's very vocal. She's myself. She's a little mini me. But my older one came to me a good 2 years ago, and she said that I was working too much. And as I was running the gyms at the time, I was present at home. I never wanted the gyms to run me. I didn't want to have to be at the facilities for them to run. I wanted to hire great people that were like-minded and aligned with what our values are and what we're delivering and serving the community. And so I never had to be at the gym. It isn't, even though my name is on the business, I reminded my staff, you guys are the role models that are touching and connecting with these kids and these families and helping establish this positive community day in and day out. We're trying to grow the business and have multiple locations, and I cannot bilocate or trilocate or, whatever. And people understood that. And I think they respected the fact that it didn't need to be about me. And so I felt as if, because I'm at home running the business and wearing all these multiple hats, that I was present enough for my kids and for my family. And my children, especially my oldest, made it very clear, you're here, but you're not fully here. I would constantly have to put out fires. You're a business owner, there's always something that is going on. And so 24/7, I would be on call. And I then started opening my eyes to the fact that, I need to bring in business partners that have done this before so that I can step back and take on a different role with the business so that I can be more present for my family. And that's what I was able to do. And my business partners have been phenomenal. They've really helped bring in the right team of people. We have about at least 12 people doing what I used to do, but it makes sense to be able to build that management team, to be able to establish a very strong foundation so that when we grow, we'll be able to sustain that growth. And I couldn't be happier.
I'm curious, Dominique, what was that particular moment, or was there a moment that created a shift for you as it relates to like success and balance? Was it motherhood? Was it another event? Was it after the Olympics? Like, at what point did you go from just being so locked in, 100% dialed in, perform at any cost, to, I guess, I don't really love the word balance, but just
No, I don't
to
either.
prioritizing other things?
I would say motherhood. Say motherhood. It's fine when you're married and your spouse is working and you're working and you might be in different locations, and that was fine because I think it gives my husband a break from me, I'll be honest. He's like, when's your next trip? But I think, it was definitely motherhood. And when I became a mom, I didn't stop working and stop traveling. I then brought my child with me and then my children with me. And even to this day, I'll bring the whole family with me. And my husband's like, this is so not enjoyable. Like, it's like we're bringing the Brady Bunch on this flight. But, they enjoy the trips. It's building family memories. I mean, even as a limited partner with the Atlanta Falcons, I couldn't imagine not bringing my family to the games. I made this commitment to be a part of this great organization with, Mr. Blank and his family and his foundation. I want to share this with my kids. I want to share this with my husband. For me, to not have them present during that journey wouldn't be as fulfilling for me whatsoever. We were at a Monday Night Football game the other day. We're standing on the sideline. My kids are there, and Bijan Robinson runs off the field, gives my son a big hug. He's wearing his jersey, which is cool. And his twin sister a big hug, gives my husband dap, and gives me a big hug. I'm like, these are moments my kids would not have if they weren't present at these events with me. And so for me, family's always been first. And if I can have my family be a part of these work opportunities in this journey, I always want them there. It makes it much more fulfilling. I've traveled enough on my own and lived a selfish enough life, where it's just me, myself, and I before getting married. And it's not fulfilling. That's why, the Olympic gold, while I'm very honored and humbled by having the talent and a little bit of luck on my side to be a part of the Magnificent Seven, that's not in my top 10 because I didn't share it with the closest people that I love. I love those teammates. They're phenomenal. But life is more than just about sports. And that's why I love having my family alongside.
I love it. I love it. And shifting gears to leadership, I mean, whether it's in the businesses today or just as a whole, like how do you coach your leaders when they're navigating some form of adversity?
Yeah, I think it's me coaching myself first and foremost. It's me checking my ego. I always talk about how my Olympic team was able to accomplish what we accomplished. How were we able to make history? And I say that each and every one of us, all 7 of us, had big inflated egos. We were either national champions, world champions, former Olympians. We were businesses and brands. We were celebrities at the time. And so we had egos. And I think once we all collectively made the decision to check our ego, we were able to then accomplish what we knew we could set out to accomplish. And it's no different than when I was the CEO of the company. I didn't want to have that mindset that it's my way or the highway. That's the type of gym environment that my former coach ran. And so you felt many times belittled and your voice didn't matter and silenced many times. And there was a great deal of fear and intimidation. And that's unfortunately how the gymnastics world is run. It has been run that way for many decades because of the influences of the likes of a Bella Caroli who came over and then created all of these champions. And so I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to be a gym owner at the time and a founder at the time that lifted up the people around them and allowed them to have voices. And to be able to do that, I had to check my ego and silence what I felt as if was always right. I understand that I make the final decision, but it's a team effort. And whenever I would travel and my gyms were still running, I reminded myself they wouldn't be running if I didn't have this amazing team of people that were aligned with our vision and our values and how we wanted to serve the community. And that's where I needed to many times make myself a little smaller and allow other people's voices to be heard. And so I think the best way that we can be leaders many times is checking our egos and just appreciating, respecting those around us that allow all of this to be possible. But again, in the long run, we make the final decisions, but it's important that people feel as if they're heard.
The other question I had is that how do you maintain just high standards while at the same time preventing burnout, right? So it's not to say the two always go hand in hand, but generally high output also leads to a different level of commitment. How do you manage the two in your team?
I'm not the CEO anymore. So I'm the founder and brand ambassador, and that has allowed me to have I know you don't like the word, but a lot more balance with my life. I think it's just putting things in perspective and recognizing what success is. And success is, in my opinion, not more money or more accolades or, more of achievement of certain things. It could be more time with your family, building a deeper relationship, maybe with the people that are on your team. I think people think that I'm superwoman. They've said it, or they think that we should all strive to be superwoman. And I feel as if that's when you will crash and burn, when you're trying to do everything for everyone and be what the world says is success. And I think there needs to be this level of balance where you got to recognize what's most important for you. Everyone's, I think, definition of success is different. And for me at this time in my life, it really is my family. I know my kids are going to grow up very quickly. I hear it from people around me all the time. Empty nesters remind me as I'm schlepping and pulling the kids in the car at 7 a.m. to get to school, you're going to miss these days. Like they miss these days. They are in a house with their spouse and it's quiet. And my husband and I remind ourselves like this noise and this chaos and this clutter will be over someday. And we're going to want to be back to those stages. I mean, if you have an Apple iPhone, you always get those memories that pop up, right? And I will look at these memories. Many times I weep. Or many times I say to my husband, oh my goodness, I don't even remember this time. Because when I birthed twins, it was a blur for the first 3 to 4 years because we were also starting the business and then running the business. And he's like, oh my gosh, how do you not remember that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like they are growing up so quickly. And so for me, it's about creating that level of balance, not forgetting what's most important. And as I always say, and I don't like saying it, but it's a reality that, if you ever get the opportunity to be on your deathbed, then you understand what I'm saying. You don't want to regret that you didn't spend time with the most important people in your life. And for me, it's my faith, it's my 4 kids, and it's my husband. And we have time to spend time with those that are the most important. I'm excited about what we're doing with the gym brands, but it's just important that you try to recognize what's most important and what makes you smile and what's the most fulfilling moments in your life. And for me, it's not flipping on a balance beam. It's not opening the next facility, even though I know we're going to impact thousands of lives with that. It's really making sure that my home is intact and full of harmony.
Absolutely. And as you're saying this, I feel like I'm in a similar stage in my life as well. And this is, my wife and I, we have 2 young girls and they're, 4 and 6 years old, and they are the priority, even above the business. But I want to ask something that almost, I guess, to some extent seemed controversial in that, is it privilege that we can be and make the choices that we make now in terms of how to prioritize because of those earlier sacrifice or investments you made in an earlier period? And for somebody who's maybe earlier in their journey, let's say they're just starting their business or they're just, in an earlier part of their career, what advice would you give to them?
They're starting their business. What I did is I worked overnight. Like when I was creating my business plan or connecting and trying to develop some different marketing ideas or anything and everything. There's this glacier and it says something, but then it's like hard work, sacrifice, and it's all underneath. The iceberg. Yep. And my husband many times remembers waking up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And he's like, how did you not go to sleep? Like you've not gone to sleep. And I'm like, I want to make sure. And I was present. This is before opening the doors. And even shortly after opening the doors, I want to make sure I'm present for our kids where I'm not doing all this stuff that really takes a soul focus and grind and complete silence that I would never get during the day so that I can get this business off the ground, but then also be present for the little ones. And I would say hang in there, for those that are entrepreneurs, it is a sacrifice. It is a grind. It is many times 24/7. And you have to make some sacrifices where maybe you don't sleep, or you get up significantly earlier than everyone else and you do some work that you can do before everyone else wakes up in the house. That was what I did for, goodness, quite a few years, but it wasn't foreign to me. I think being an Olympic athlete trained me for that. It gave me this work ethic. It gave me this ability to sacrifice and not focus on, coulda, woulda, shoulda, or what am I missing out on, or why is this so hard? I always felt like this adversity is going to make me stronger. And at that time, I don't think the movie came out, but I finally watched the movie someone was talking about, and it's called The Greatest Showman.
Oh,
so
Yep.
I listen to that soundtrack every single day because I'm not someone that's always self-motivated. I need some like outward motivation. And my husband will be like, oh my goodness, not this again. And I'm like, it's getting me through. And so, be creative and unique, have that vision board, listen to inspirational music, maybe people like gospel music, surround yourself with the right people. I got a life coach again, my husband was like, why do you need a life coach? You're driven enough. No, I needed an individual from a different perspective to kind of help me get over this hump and then the next hump and then the next hump. Because, we're human. We want to give up. We don't think it's worth the sacrifice. We don't maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think as an entrepreneur, you've got to be creative to persevere and work through. And that's what I was able to do. And that's the advice that I would give many entrepreneurs that are going through challenging times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you mentioned this earlier, but you've been outspoken about Simone Biles and just in general, like athlete mental health. How did you decide when to speak up and how do you approach those conversations?
I admire the likes of Allie Reisman. I admire the likes of Jamie Dancher, my Olympic teammate from 2000, who was frowned upon at that time. I admire the likes of Simone was one of the athletes as well that spoke out about mental health. They spoke out about Larry Nassar. They spoke out about mental health. They spoke out about needing to clean up the culture of the sport of gymnastics. And I think with those younger individuals being so bold and courageous, it made me, one of the old heads, really process what I went through in the sport and then say, hey, I have a voice too. My voice had been silenced for so long. I think we were trained back in the 90s to be robots. When I look back at my interviews, I'm like, oh my goodness, what canned responses? Like I wasn't speaking truthfully at all. And I think you were very controlled because you didn't want it to impact your selection on an Olympic team. If you look back at the history of the sport, there's a selection committee that's very powerful and they can take you off the team or put you on the team for, reasons unknown. And I think there was a great deal of fear back then. And so I wasn't able to speak my mind. And then when everything came out in 2016, all of these athletes being outspoken, and then also what Simone Biles had experienced at the 2021 Olympic Games in Tokyo, going through the twisties, allowing herself to step back, it made me become a little bit more vocal about mental health in sports. So many other athletes have been much stronger voices, but it was a great opportunity for me to promote the gym because we're trying to focus on a healthy culture, a healthy environment. We're not trying to produce Olympic champions. We're trying to produce champions in life, happy, active, strong kids. If you ask the majority of parents, do you want your child to be an Olympic gold medalist and a professional athlete, or would you rather them be happy, active, and strong in life? And I think they would choose the latter if they have more sense and they think about in the long run what's going to be best for their kid. And so that allowed us to really promote what we were doing in the gymnastics environment, the ninja environment, and that has allowed us to grow our business even faster.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly fascinating. It's almost like this dichotomy between what you view prepares a child for the world better. Previously, like there's kind of the Olympic route, which some could argue on the coaching side, they're like this level of adversity is going to prepare you to be a strong human being, to stand on your own when you're older. And then there's the approach you're taking with your academies. I guess if you could contrast the two, obviously I know which one you believe is the more effective one. But what are your thoughts on that? Is it just more adversity earlier on, or is it finding a way to, I'll come back to it, just balance this so that kids don't tip over the edge?
They're still experiencing adversity. Getting on a balance beam and doing a cartwheel or a back handspring on floor is not easy. You have to overcome fear. You have to work hard. It is a grueling process to learn I would say not easiest because it's easy for myself, but to learn gymnastics fundamentals is physically draining, is emotionally draining, mentally draining. It really does take a level of sacrifice. Just because a kid is not training for the Olympic Games and living in the gym 5 to 7 hours a day or 36 plus hours a week, or competing nationally or on an Olympic stage doesn't mean that they're not overcoming adversity. My little ones that were doing the sport of gymnastics, they would be so elated that they eventually learned a back handspring on the balance beam that took them over a year plus to be able to get from the floor to the balance beam. And they kind of, I think, learned a great deal from that journey. And what I loved is they were able to overcome adversity, face their fears without scars. Our coaches care about the athletes. Never did I walk into a gym, any of my gyms, and a kid crying because a coach was yelling at them and putting them down and demeaning them and even abusing their parents. Like, if you know anything about the sport of gymnastics, the parents are fearful of even coming in. Whenever I saw tears at the Dominique Dawes Academy, it's because the kid didn't want to leave. The parent was like, we got to go home. Like, we got to leave. They're having so much fun, but they're still working hard. They're not sacrificing their whole childhood. They're making friendships. The people that they're training with are not their competitors. They're not trying to beat the people next to them, even though it is an individual sport. These are their friends. And that's what I love about what we've developed. These are communities of, parents that are looking for a healthy environment for their kids. They want their kids to stay physically in shape because we have a childhood obesity issue in our country. The coaches care about the kids' emotional health. They're going to meet the kids where they're at emotionally. There's no need to demean a kid or put them down or to hit a kid. It happens all the time. I went through it. Or to ignore a kid's emotional health for them to accomplish a skill. That only leads to scars in life. Any insecurity that I've experienced in life, much of it came from the sport of gymnastics. These kids that are going to leave our program, they are going to leave happy. They are going to leave healthier. They are going to leave with confidence. They are going to leave with the belief that, you know what, if I work hard, I stay committed, I listen to my coaches, gosh, anything is possible. It's not the Olympics that's going to help them realize that and help them throughout life and help them to become successful in whatever it is that they choose to be in life. It's really having the right positive coaches that believe in them, and that's what we offer them.
I love that. And Dominique, if you could go back and speak to your 15-year-old self before the Olympics, like what would you tell her, knowing what you know today?
This journey somehow will make you stronger. I think, I'm just a little unique because I always say this, if I had, and it's not to put down my abilities or anything like that or my strength, but if I had this loving home to go home to, I wouldn't have endured that. I think, number one, my parents would have been present and they wouldn't have allowed me to endure that. Parents, I always say to parents, open your eyes. If your child is crying each and every day, if their child is injured or going through multiple surgeries, I hear it all the time, you got to talk to your child. You got to look at your child's face. And I always share this story. I was at my children's school for some family function thing. And there was a parent that came to me and they were so excited to tell me that their child was a part of the TOPS training gymnastics elite level program. And this little girl, itty bitty thing, just like I was back in the day, she's jacked. She's got a six-pack. You can see it through her tank top. And they were so proud to talk about how accomplished she is becoming in the sport of gymnastics. Now, this is a school activity like fair, full of bouncy houses, music, popcorn, cotton candy. My kids, all of them, are in the cotton candy or flipping around on the bouncy house, having the time of their lives, being kids. This little girl was standing here stoic. Not once did she play. She had a sad look on her face, and yet the parents were more caught up in the fact that this child is going to be so accomplished in the sport of gymnastics that they lost sight of the fact that she's not happy. We want our kids to accomplish their full potential. We want them to work hard. We want them to have sacrifice, but we shouldn't strip them of the fact that they should enjoy what they're doing. They need to be kids first and foremost. They have one childhood. That's one thing I'm unwilling to sacrifice with my little ones. And that's what I think people need to recognize what's most important. You can teach your kids the fundamentals of work ethic and sacrifice and working with the team, but it doesn't have to be that grueling process where they sacrifice everything to become so accomplished. There's so many people in this world that are so accomplished and they're incomplete and they're miserable. We don't want that for ourselves and we don't want that for our children.
Agreed. And Dominique, as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, what does being a game changer mean to you?
I always talk about this. It's just planting seeds in the lives of those around you. I think try to be a positive influence. I think if we get to the top of the mountaintop and we're alone, I think it's a nice view, but wouldn't it be better if we share it with others? Wouldn't it be better if we are a game changer that wants to lift up the world around us and allow other people to be able to accomplish what we accomplish, if not more. That's why I'm thrilled for the likes of a Gabby Douglas who surpassed what I accomplished in the sport of gymnastics. She won the all-around at the 2012 Olympics in London, and I was there thrilled and thinking, oh my goodness, she's going to motivate the next generation of young girls and boys of color to look at the sport of gymnastics as an opportunity for them. Simone Biles as well. I love applauding these athletes that have surpassed what I've done, and you can only do that if you plant the positive seeds in those around you and allow them to soar.
I want to give a huge thank you to Dominique for taking the time to join us on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on our interview with Dominique Dawes, see the show notes for this episode in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.